They were all laughing, posing, joking, holding each other close, but not once did they turn toward me. I sat on the porch swing, invisible in plain sight, smiling as if I mattered, praying someone would say, "Come on, Grandma. You're in this one too." I used to be the one holding the camera. Christmas mornings, beach trips, birthday cakes, me hands were behind every frame. I caught the way my daughter cried when she turned 10 and didn't get a pony, the way my son's eyes lit up when he learned to ride his bike, and how my husband always tried not to smile when I snapped candid photos of him mowing the lawn. I took the pictures because I wanted to hold time still, just for a moment. Now time walks past me. It was Dylan's graduation party. My youngest grandson, the baby who used to fall asleep in my lap while I hummed Patsy Cline songs. He was taller than his father now, lean and confident, wearing a pale blue shirt and a too-wide grin. Every photo he took was with someone. His friends, his mother, his older brother, even the neighbor's dog. "Grandma," he called out once, as he passed me holding a tray of soda cans. I smiled. "We'll take a picture later," he said. I nodded. But there was no later. They cut the cake. Someone spilled punch on the deck. Music played. A drone flew overhead. The sun dipped low, and the lights strung around the fence flickered on. Chairs were stacked. Plates were tossed. Guests started to leave. No picture. No moment to hold. Just me on the porch swing with a paper plate on my lap and a plastic fork in my hand, long after my appetite had left. I waited until the last car pulled away. My daughter, Amy, kissed my cheek. "You okay, Mom?" I smiled like I always do. "Fine," I said. "I am not fine." I used to think invisibility was something only magicians conjured up, that it was a trick, a performance. But aging has its own version of magic, cruel and quiet. One day you're the center of the story, and the next you're a forgotten footnote. The room fills with chatter, and you're just not spoken to, not seen. That night, I went home alone. No one offered to drive me. My house was 2 blocks down, and I said I needed the walk. I needed to feel the air, the stars, the silence. I sat at my kitchen table with the porch light still on, staring at the old framed photographs above the counter. So many memories. So much proof that I once existed fully. I thought about how Dylan would post pictures tomorrow. Maybe a photo of the cake. A silly shot of his brother sticking out his tongue. Maybe even a video clip of the moment the balloons floated up into the sky. But not one of me. And you'll remember, won't he? He'll remember the way I always had butterscotch candies in my purse. The way my hand felt when he held it crossing the street. How I sang, "You are my sunshine," even when my voice cracked. That has to matter. That has to be enough. But some nights, when the house creaks and the heater hums and no one is coming through the door, I wonder if memories are only real when someone else keeps them too. I met Rose the next day at the market. She's 92 and walks like she's dancing. Said she once trained ballerinas in Boston. Her lipstick is always red and her voice cuts through silence like a brass horn. "You look hollow," she said. "Not tired. Not lonely. Hollow." I liked her immediately. We sat outside with coffee. She had her old Polaroid camera with her. Clicked a photo of the two of us, right there on the bench. "People forget," she said. "That's why we take pictures." I told her about the party. About the picture that never happened. Her face softened. "Oh, honey," she sighed. "The older we get, the more we fade in their eyes. Not because they don't love us, but because they're busy burning bright." I nodded. Then she held up the Polaroid she'd taken. "You're here. I see you." I started taking pictures again. Not for them. For me. Snapshots of the sunrise through the curtains. The steam curling from my tea. A wilted rose in the garden. My wrinkled hand holding a knitting needle. I captured every fragile, beautiful thing that reminded me I was still here. Some days I would leave the porch light on and photograph its golden glow at midnight. Some days I took selfies smiling, serious, crying. I stopped hiding what I felt. I am not a footnote. I am a chapter. And if no one else reads me, I will write myself. One Sunday morning, I invited Dylan over for brunch. He came, looking tired but sweet, the way boys do when they've grown into men too quickly. He sat at my table, scrolling his phone. I placed a plate of pancakes in front of him, the way I did when he was 7. He didn't look up. "Dylan," I said gently, "do you remember last week? The party?" "Of course," he said, finally setting his phone down. "It was amazing. I posted, like, 30 photos." "I noticed," I said, slicing a strawberry. "None of them had me in them." He blinked. Wait, really? I nodded. His face changed. Oh no. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I didn't mean to. I know, I said. He looked around, like he was searching for something to fix it. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I handed him my camera. My old one. The one with the scuffed leather strap and the broken flash. Take one now, I said. He smiled. Right now? Right now. He clicked the shutter. And again. And again. Until I laughed. Until I cried. Until he put the camera down and hugged me tighter than he had in years. I'll remember this, he whispered. I believed him. Monday morning came, quiet and thick with rain. I pulled open the curtains and stood at the window, watching the sky leak gently over the hydrangeas. The photos Dylan took the day before still sat in the camera. I hadn't looked at them yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I made oatmeal, added a pinch of cinnamon, sat at the kitchen table with the soft jazz playing from the radio. Billie Holiday, I think. My hands felt stiff this morning. The kind of stiffness that reminds you something inside is slowing down. But I didn't complain. Not anymore. The phone rang. It was Amy. Morning, Mom. Dylan told me about yesterday. He said it really meant a lot to him. That's so, I said. She hesitated. He said he felt bad, that he forgot to include you in the photos from the party. I didn't realize. I'm sorry, too. I let the silence hang for a moment before saying, it's not about the pictures, Amy. It's about remembering people while they're still here. I know, she whispered. We didn't say much after that. Just talked about the weather, the neighbor's new dog, a recall on the rice cooker she bought. Life's little distractions. After we hung up, I finally picked up the camera, sat in the living room with a blanket over my legs, and clicked through the images. The first photo caught me by surprise. It was my butt not posed. It was me mid-laugh, head thrown back, hands resting on the table, crow's feet around my eyes, but pure joy etched into every wrinkle. The next one showed me looking right into the lens, eyes wide, vulnerable, hopeful. Then one where Dylan had stood behind me, taking the photo over my shoulder as I poured syrup onto his plate, my hands shaking just a little, the light hitting my silver hair like it was spun from thread. I cried, not because the pictures were perfect, but because, for once, I was seen, really seen. Later that afternoon, I pulled an old shoebox from the hallway closet. It was scuffed, the lid torn at the corners. Inside were decades of photographs, my life in gloss and matte. There was one of my mother stern and proud, standing beside her garden. Another of my wedding day. My husband, Charlie, in that ridiculous powder blue tuxedo he swore made him look dashing. And the kids, so many photos of them. First steps, toothless grins, scraped knees, school plays. But not many of me. I'd always been the one behind the lens. The keeper of memories. The silent historian. I spent hours that day sorting the photos, stacking them into piles, labeling the backs, writing little stories, dates, names, feelings. Because if I didn't, who would? That evening, I took 3 of Dylan's new pictures and placed them in a fresh frame. Set it right beside the coffee maker. The next morning, it greeted me like an old friend. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. A real one, with stamps and a handwritten address. From Rose. Inside was a photo of us at the market, our coffee cups raised in cheers, both of us grinning like schoolgirls. She'd written on the back, still here, still blooming. She added a note. Dear Evelyn, you reminded me how precious it is to be remembered. So I'm sending this to say don't forget yourself, either. Love, Rose. I smiled so hard my face hurt. It had been so long since anyone had sent me something just because. Not a bill, not a charity appeal, not an appointment reminder. Just a letter, from one soul to another. I pinned the photo to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. That weekend, I took the bus into town. Not for groceries, not for errands, just to be around people. I walked through the park, listened to children scream with joy as they ran through fountains, watched teenagers take group selfies by the old clock tower. At one bench, a couple sat arguing softly, their hands still clasped despite the tension. At another, an old man fed pigeons with practiced patience, seeds balanced on his palm like a gift. I sat across from him. He looked up. You're not from around here, he said. Maybe I am, I replied. Just been gone a while. He nodded. Name's Lewis. Evelyn. We talked for an hour. About nothing and everything. He used to be a teacher. Lost his wife 3 years ago. Said he came to this park every Sunday to remember her. I bring the bird seeds, Because she loved them, he said. And when they land, I tell myself it's her saying hi. I swallowed the lump in my throat. That's beautiful. He smiled. It's how I stay visible, I guess. Keep some part of her alive. Before I left, I asked if I could take his picture. Only if you send me a copy, he said, grinning. I did. Dylan came over more after that. Sometimes just for coffee. Sometimes to mow the lawn or bring groceries. But more often, just to sit. We talked about music, books, his plans for college. One day, I showed him the shoebox of photos. He sat cross-legged on my living room rug for nearly 2 hours, pulling them out one by one, asking questions. Who's this? He asked, holding up a picture of my brother on a fishing trip. Uncle Frank, I said. He once caught a trout so big he claimed it fed the whole family for 3 days. Total lie, but a good one. We laughed. He kept digging. This one's you, he said, holding up a black and white shot of me in a poodle skirt, twirling on a dance floor. I blushed. Senior prom. Your grandpa cut in halfway through a song. Never gave me back. Dylan's eyes were wide. You were beautiful. I touched his cheek. Still am. He nodded slowly. Yeah, you are. One night, he came over with a small wrapped box. What's this? I asked. Just open it. Inside was a new digital frame. He'd already loaded it with dozens of photos old and new. Pictures of me. Him. Us together. I want these to play in my dorm room, he said. So you're there with me. I couldn't speak for a moment. Then I whispered, thank you. He shrugged. You're part of everything good I've ever had, Grandma. I think. I just forgot to say it out loud. I hugged him. Long tight. Real. The next week, we printed a book. Dylan called it The Woman Behind the Lens. He designed the cover himself black and white, with my hands holding a camera. It wasn't for sale. It wasn't flashy. Just 50 pages of memories. Captions. Dates. Quotes. Photos from my life, from my heart. He gave copies to Amy, to his brother, to my sister-in-law in Phoenix. Everyone cried. Especially me. For the first time in decades, I felt like I'd been given back a piece of myself I didn't know I was missing. And yet, even with all that, the ache didn't vanish entirely. Because memory is a tricky thing. It doesn't just hold the beautiful moments. It cradles the absences too. Some nights, I still wake up reaching for Charlie in the dark. Some mornings, I still think I hear the kids' tiny footsteps on the stairs, only to remember they've long since grown. But now, when I reach for something in the silence, it's not empty. It's filled with photos, with words, with the faces of those who do remember, with proof. Proof that I was here, that I mattered, that I am still part of the frame. A few days later, the church bulletin listed a community memory wall event. It was part of the annual fall festival. Families could bring photos of loved ones, past and present, and pin them on a giant board. There'd be cider, live music, and space to remember those who shaped us. I hadn't been to that festival in years. Last time I went, Charlie was still here, and we danced under the twinkle lights to an off-key local band. I remembered the warmth of his hand, the way he whispered into my ear, "You'll always be my favorite song." That memory alone was reason enough to go. So I gathered a few photos, some of Charlie, some of the kids when they were little, and one of me, taken by Dylan just days ago. I almost didn't include that last one. It felt indulgent. But then I heard Rose's voice in my head. Don't forget yourself either. I pinned the photo to the top right corner of the board. Me smiling. Eyes soft, present, alive. And as people passed, they paused. A few whispered kind words. One woman even asked, "Who took that picture? It feels like you're looking straight through the lens." "My grandson," I said proudly. "He sees me now." When I got home that night, the porch felt different. Not just lit, but warm, inviting. I stood there for a moment, listening to the crickets, breathing in the late October air. Then I saw it in an envelope, tucked into my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a photograph. The photo was of me at the festival, standing beside the memory wall, one hand gently resting on my own picture. I hadn't known anyone was taking it. On the back, written in a familiar scrawl, were 5 words. "You looked so alive today." No signature, but I didn't need one. I knew it was Dylan. From that moment on, I kept a journal beside my bed. Each night, I wrote down one memory. Just one. Sometimes it was a vivid story like the time Charlie and I got caught in a rainstorm and danced barefoot through the puddles. Sometimes it was just a color or a scent. Burnt toast. Fresh paint. The powdery perfume my mother wore that always made me sneeze. I wasn't trying to hold on to the past, I was trying to hand it forward. Some days, I'd read a few entries out loud when Dylan visited. He'd sit quietly, absorbing each word like scripture. "You should record these," he told me once. "Let people hear your voice." I laughed. Who would want to listen to an old woman ramble? He looked at me with all the softness of boyhood still left in him. I would. So I did. He brought over a little microphone and set up his laptop on my kitchen table. Each Sunday after church, we'd record an hour of me just talking, remembering, laughing, even crying sometimes. And when we finished, he'd edit the files and upload them to a folder labeled Grandma's Time Machine. I asked once if he was sharing them with anyone. He shook his head. "Not yet. I just want to keep them for now. Like secret treasures." My heart swelled. One day, months later, Dylan told me he was applying for a summer internship in Chicago at a media company. Said he wanted to tell real stories. The kind people forget to write down. I hugged him so tightly he laughed and wheezed at the same time. "You're going to be amazing," I said. "Because of you," he replied. And then he added, almost like a confession, "That day at the party, I didn't forget you on purpose. I just didn't see you. But now I see you everywhere." Tears welled in my eyes. That's all I ever wanted. And it was to be seen, to be remembered, to be part of someone's frame not as an afterthought, but as a center. The day he left for Chicago, he came by to say goodbye. He brought me one final gift, a small hardcover book, professionally printed. On the front was a photo of my hands, cradling a coffee cup. The title said, "If I disappear, remember this." Inside were my journal entries, my photographs, my quotes from our recordings. He'd made a legacy out of me. I traced the pages with shaking fingers. "You made me immortal," I whispered. He smiled. "You always were." Then he took out his phone, leaned in beside me, and snapped a photo. "First one for the wall," he said. "You and me. Right now." I beamed. And for once, I didn't have to wonder if I'd be included. I was. Time has a strange way of layering itself. Some mornings, I would forget Dylan was gone for the summer. I'd pull out 2 mugs instead of 1. I'd set the second spoon down gently beside a plate, then stop mid-motion and laugh at myself. Other days, I swore I heard his voice upstairs, only to realize it was the radio bleeding through the floorboards. But I didn't let the quiet undo me. Not this time. Instead, I filled my days with purpose. Every Tuesday, I volunteered at the local historical society. My job was to help archive photos and personal letters from residents who had passed, people who had lived, breathed, and vanished quietly into the edges of time. Their belongings carefully boxed and labeled were the only proof they had been here. Some of the photos had names scrawled in cursive on the backs: Edith, 1947, or me and Jimmy, our first car. But many were blank. Smiling faces frozen in time, with no one left to name them. I made it my mission to change that. I started a project called The Forgotten Frame. I created a little blog where I posted one photo each week, inviting readers to identify the people in them. It gained traction faster than I expected. Neighbors commented. Grandchildren wrote in. A few even came to the archives in person to search for family. People started sending me their own unlabeled photos, begging for context, for memory. And for the first time in years, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was the keeper of lost stories. One afternoon, I got a letter from a woman in Minnesota. She'd found my blog through a friend. Attached was a picture of an older man sitting on the hood of a car with a harmonica in his lap. She asked if I knew anything about the make of the car or how to date the photo. I looked at it for nearly 10 minutes before my breath caught in my chest. It was my brother, Frank. The very photo I thought had been lost during a move decades ago. And the woman who sent it? Her grandmother had dated him briefly in the 50s. They'd parted ways, but she'd kept the picture all her life, tucked in the corner of her mirror. When she passed, it ended up in her granddaughter's hands. I called Dylan that night, crying as I told him. "They're all coming back to me," I said, piece by piece. "You're pulling history together," he replied. "You're stitching memory back into the world." I smiled. Maybe. Or maybe the world just needed someone to care again. By late July, the heat had thickened. I started leaving water out on the porch for the birds and stray cats. Rose would stop by sometimes, wearing her bright orange sun hat, and bringing peaches from the farmer's market. "You're famous now," she teased, waving a copy of the local newspaper. On the front page, Evelyn Marsh, the memory keeper of Sycamore County. I blushed. Oh, stop. But she was proud. So was Amy. She shared the article on Facebook with a caption that made me tear up. "My mother spent decades taking care of everyone else. Now she's showing us how to take care of the past. And of each other." Underneath, Dylan commented, "My hero. Always." I printed it and tacked it to the fridge. Not for vanity, but because sometimes, when the days get long and quiet, we need a little proof that we're still visible, still loved. August brought storms. Not just the kind outside, but the kind inside me too. I woke one morning and my left hand wouldn't close. The fingers curled only halfway, trembling with stiffness. My knees felt thick and unsteady. I dropped a bowl in the sink and it shattered. I sat down and cried, not from pain, but from the fear of what it meant. A few days later, I went to the doctor. She said the words gently. "It's likely early-stage rheumatoid arthritis, Evelyn. It can be managed, but things will get harder." I nodded, swallowing the tight knot in my throat. When I got home, I sat in my recliner and stared at my camera on the shelf. What if I couldn't hold it soon? What if I couldn't write? What if the pieces I was stitching back into the world began to unravel again? Then I heard a knock. I opened the door to find a young woman holding a bouquet of wildflowers and a notebook. "Hi," she said nervously. "I'm Clara. I read about you in the paper. I want to help." "Help with what?" She held up her notebook. "Stories, photos, memory. I want to learn how to do what you do." Clara became my shadow. She came over every weekend. We sorted boxes, scanned photos, tracked down relatives. She learned to read old handwriting. She asked thoughtful questions. She soaked it all up. And she never let me carry the heavy boxes alone. When my hands ached, she typed. When I was too tired, she recorded. It was like handing the baton to someone mid-race, not because I had to, but because it was time. One day she asked, "Why do you think no one else was doing this before you?" I paused. "Because people don't realize how fast we disappear until it's already happened." She nodded slowly, scribbling it down in her notebook. I smiled. "Don't just write that. Believe it. Carry it." She did. The last letter I received from Dylan before he returned home was short. Just a postcard with a photo of a crowded street in Chicago. On the back, he wrote, "Grandma, everyone here is moving fast, talking loud, staring at their phones. But yesterday, I saw an old man sitting on a bench, just watching pigeons." I stopped. I took his photo. Then I sat with him for half an hour. He told me about his late wife, his son in Oregon, and how he used to play trumpet in the Navy. "I saw him, Grandma, just like you taught me. Love, Dylan." I pressed the postcard to my chest and closed my eyes. He didn't need a camera to remember. He had his heart. The day Dylan came home, I wore my favorite blue dress and made lemon bars. He stepped through the door taller, leaner, older, but his eyes were still the same. He hugged me like no time had passed. "Guess what?" he said, grinning. "I got offered a job. Real journalism. I'll be traveling, interviewing people across the state. All human interest stuff." I beamed. "That's perfect." He hesitated. "It's a lot, though. I'll be gone a lot. I don't want you to feel forgotten." I touched his cheek. "You gave me back my place in the world, Dylan. You helped me make sure I wouldn't vanish. Wherever you go, I'm with you." He looked away for a moment, blinking fast. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a wrapped package. "This is for you," he said. Inside was a photo book. Not printed, hand-assembled. Every page was one of my photographs, old and new. Mixed in were photos he had taken of me, of our town, of the people I'd helped. The last page had just one sentence. "You were always in the frame." I couldn't speak, so I just hugged him. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was disappearing. I felt immortal. Summer faded. The air grew cooler, and the leaves on the big sycamore in my backyard began to yellow. I could feel it in my bones too, the season shifting inside me. Days grew slower, nights colder. But something else was changing too. For once, I didn't dread the silence. Clara came every Saturday, still eager, still scribbling in her notebook. And on Sundays, after church, we'd sit with hot cider and read memory submissions from people all over the country. Letters flooded in, stories of long-lost grandfathers, sisters taken too soon, neighbors whose names had been forgotten. Each one aching to be remembered. One woman wrote, I didn't realize until I read your blog that I hadn't looked at a picture of my mother in 10 years. I dug one out yesterday. Just sat there and cried. Thank you for reminding me she mattered. Another message simply said, my father died 2 years ago. No one ever wrote down his story. Your work inspired me to start. Thank you for giving memory a heartbeat. I read each message aloud to Clara, our eyes often misting, our hearts tightening. The world was hungry for remembrance, for tenderness, for someone to say, I see you. Dylan called often, from trains, from parking lots, from small-town diners. He told me about a waitress in Nebraska who kept a photo of her grandmother inside her order book, folded and soft around the edges. About a retired farmer who showed him a black and white image of his first tractor like it was the Mona Lisa. About a girl with pink hair in Iowa who carried a Polaroid of her father in her boot said, it kept him close. I think people are just waiting to be asked, Dylan said. They're full of stories. No one ever thinks to listen. You're listening, I told him. And he was. The boy who once forgot to take my picture had become a man who gave strangers the dignity of being seen. I turned 83 in October. Amy threw me a party, just a small one. Family. A few neighbors. Clara came, too, with a basket of lemon scones. She wore lipstick for the first time since I met her. They strung lights in the backyard and played music from the 60s. Dylan brought his camera, of course. And this time, I didn't have to ask to be included. I was in every frame. Laughing with Amy, holding hands with Clara, standing beside the sycamore tree that had grown as old and strong as me. When the sky darkened and the fire pit glowed, Dylan stood up and cleared his throat. I want to say something, he said. The yard grew quiet. I know birthdays are about cake and presents, he began, his voice slightly shaking. But this one's about more. It's about legacy. It's about how one woman can change a family, a town, maybe even more. He looked at me. My grandmother didn't just raise children. She raised stories. She taught me, now all of you, how to honor memory, how to see the people right in front of us, and how to listen, even to the quiet. I felt my heart thud against my ribs. He turned, grabbed a package from the table, and handed it to me. Inside was a hardbound book, heavy, beautiful, edged in gold. Its title, She Was the Frame. I opened it and gasped. It was the culmination of everything. My photos. My words, the stories we'd collected, my voice stitched into every caption, faces, names, years, laughter, sorrow, triumph. At the back, Dylan had written a letter. Dear Grandma, you taught me that being remembered is the final form of love, that our names don't live forever, but our impact can. You were the lens, the light, the frame. And now, because of you, the world sees again. My hands trembled. I looked up and the yard was blurred by tears. Clara clapped softly. Amy wiped her eyes. Rose raised her glass from the back corner. And Dylan knelt down beside me. Thank you, I whispered. He shook his head. No, thank you. I gave away most of my old cameras that winter. Not out of sadness, but because they had work left to do. One went to Clara. One to the little boy across the street who said he wanted to be a story catcher like me. Another to the church, where a teen photography club had begun. Each camera wrapped gently, with a note tucked inside. Keep looking. Keep listening. The world is full of people hoping to be remembered. As for me, I kept the very first camera I ever owned. It sits now on my bedside table. Some nights, when the wind howls through the gutters and the ache in my hands won't let me sleep, I pick it up. I don't even need to turn it on. Just the weight of it in my lap reminds me of all the lives it captured, including mine. A month ago, Clara took over the forgotten frame. She made it bigger, built a real website. She hired 2 interns. She says they'll scan and preserve more than 10,000 photos by the end of the year. She still visits me every Sunday. Sometimes she reads me letters people send her. One woman in Kansas wrote, My daughter died at 25. I thought I'd never see her smile again. Then someone emailed me a photo of her from your site. I didn't even know it existed. But there it was. And I saw her. I saw her again. Clara paused after reading that, her eyes brimming. I hope we're doing it right, she said softly. I touched her hand. You are, I said, because you're doing it with love. Dylan came home for Christmas. Taller still, a little worn at the edges, but more rooted, more himself. He brought with him a woman named Elsie. Smart eyes, kind hands. She worked with him on his storytelling project. They weren't engaged, not yet, but I could feel it in the way they looked at each other. They asked if I would take their photo in front of the fireplace. So I did, with my old camera. Just one click. A single shutter press to freeze something beautiful. I looked through the viewfinder, focused the frame, and whispered, "You'll remember this." Dylan smiled. "I will." Not long after the new year, I caught a bad cold. The kind that hangs around longer than it should. I spent more time in bed. More time listening instead of speaking. Clara came by, gently placing a digital recorder on the nightstand. "In case you ever feel like talking," she said. I nodded. Some nights I did. Sometimes just a few words. Sometimes a story. One night, I said, "I was never afraid of dying. I was afraid of being erased." And then I laughed. Because I knew that wouldn't happen. Not anymore. Spring crept in again. Daffodils outside my window. The sycamore stretching green limbs into the sky. I watched it all from my chair. Still here. Still blooming. One morning, Clara came in with a printout. She was shaking. "You made it into the National Archives, Evelyn," she said. "They're preserving the project. Every word. Every photo." I blinked slowly. "You mean, forever?" She nodded. I closed my eyes and breathed in. A few weeks later, I felt tired. Not the kind sleep cures. The kind that goes down deep into the bones. Amy sat beside me in the quiet, her hand wrapped around mine. "I love you," she whispered. "I know," I said. "Are you scared?" I shook my head. "No. I've already been remembered." The last thing I saw was light, streaming through the curtains. Soft. Golden. And then, my grandson's voice. "You ready, Grandma?" I smiled. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "Take the picture."